Telesur.
After a weekend of marches and pot-banging protests restart in the Dominican Republic, the opposition wants the government to resign. Demonstrators demand justice for Julian Assange as a judge in London begins considering the U.S. request for his extradition. And samba schools targeted intolerance and the Bolsonaro government as Brazil gears up for the main carnival parades. Hello and welcome to Telesur English. I am Estefania Bravo in Quito, Ecuador. This is from the south. Protests are restarting in the Dominican Republic to demand the resignation of the election board. This is the 9th day of demonstrations following the suspension of local elections on February the 16th. Daisy Toussaint reports.
Once again, protesters are gathering outside the Supreme Electoral Board here in Santo Domingo. And there are also pot-banging protests scheduled around the country. The country is in a state of considerable tension after the cancellation of the municipal elections. Earlier in the day, the Electoral Board, together with the political parties, began to review the slates for the 18 municipalities where there should have been an electronic voting system on the 16th of February. These account for 62% of the country's voters, that is 4.3 million voters. So the Electoral Board, in meeting with the parties to talk about how the results will be transmitted when the elections are held again, on the 15th of March. The protests, as I said, are going ahead for a 9th day in front of the Electoral Board's offices. On Sunday, opposition parties held a march in defense of democracy, in which they called for the government to resign. The 4-kilometer march ended in Independence Square, where they demanded guarantees both for the vote on the 15th of March and for the presidential elections in May. Other protests have been called around the country and by Dominicans living abroad.
And we continue with our series, Failure of an Invasion. In this episode, Madeleine Garcia looks at the role played by the People's Militia in confronting the attack by Washington and sectors of the Venezuelan opposition.
The 5 branches of Venezuela's armed forces, united as one, the new component is the Bolivarian militia, as a complement to the traditional forces. This new pillar of the military structure, the Bolivarian militia, was key in the face of an international siege. This is the strategy of the people in arms and the war of resistance created by Hugo Chavez.
Maybe they are used to a conventional armed force, but we have more than 60,000 People's Defense Units. In every parish, in every municipality, all of them prepared to defend the nation. And this is where our greatest strength lies.
If there is an invasion, we soldiers take off our regular uniforms and join the people, as the militia in arms for the war of resistance.
As D-Day approached, the pressure on the armed forces increased dramatically, a psychological operation on a scale never seen before in Venezuela, aimed at all levels, but especially at the military commanders on the border.
2 weeks before the 23rd of February, I began to receive messages from a number in Colombia. They invited me to go over to the other side with my men of the National Guard.
They whipped up an atmosphere internationally to prepare people, psychologically, all over the world for an invasion of Venezuela.
From all across Venezuela, young people, men and women, senior citizens and social movements mobilized to join the soldiers in defense of their country.
I had the opportunity to go along with my wife, and we left our son with my mother.
Of course I was afraid to leave him. Afraid I might not come back, like a mother, but we felt like we had nothing to lose and so much to defend.
We knew what we were facing, and there was as much risk of not coming back as there was of returning victorious. Because the truth is, if they succeed in getting across that bridge, then they could very well get all the way to Caracas.
When we left Merida, we knew we were going to fight for our country. I left with my husband. We left our 2 daughters at home, and when I said goodbye, I just told them I was going to fight for their future. And they understood. They understand what this struggle is about. We knew we have to continue to fight, just because we want our children to be free.
We have to defend our country, our children's future, and the future of our economy, of everything. Losing is not an option, because we were born to live and die here.
We didn't even have enough for the tickets, but we got here, because we knew that on the 23rd, we had to be on the border, where the main attack would be, and where the future would be lost if they got across.
My name is Gloria Maria Valera, and I live here in Lagunilla. At my age of 67, if I have to die for my country, it really doesn't matter. I'm ready to die because I have already lived a good life, but I ask God not to let that happen again, and to let Venezuela move forward, because what I saw then with my own eyes, I don't want to see again.
Muy bien, muy bien, muy bien. Así es que de aquí no nos mueve nadie.
Jóvenes que dejaron a sus familias.
Young people left their families and arrived in Táchira from all over Venezuela to defend our independence, because it was really the people who deserved the credit for resisting there, in such a dangerous region with so many paramilitaries there.
We give our thanks to the Venezuelan people for holding firm and defending the dignity of all of us. It was the unity of the people and the armed forces in the Bolivarian militia, the people in arms.
The most important thing was the awareness of the Venezuelan people, who went to defend not a political party or any individual, but to defend a revolution, to defend their country. That was no small thing, because they wanted to capture San Antonio and turn it into their capital.
I understood then that these people of Venezuela have something special in their DNA, which means that when the dearest principles of their nation or their love for their country are threatened, they can do anything. They have an energy that terrifies any enemy, however strong.
The 22nd of February arrived with a message from Mike Pence, the Vice President of the United States, which echoed that of Barack Obama before the assault on Libya. Then there was a concert with more than 30 international stars using their music to justify an invasion. But they failed. In the next episode, we will look at what happened on that day of the concert and what it led to.
Madeline Garcia, Telesur, Caracas, Venezuela.
Moving on, dozens of people have gathered outside Woolwich Crown Court in southeast London, protesting against the possible extradition of WikiLeaks co-founder Julian Assange as his extradition hearing got underway. The protesters say the case against Assange is a threat to press freedom and individual civil liberties. A Crown judge has begun hearing arguments from the U.S. government lawyers who want to try Assange on espionage charges relating to the publication of U.S. military and diplomatic cables 10 years ago, exposing war crimes committed in Iraq and Afghanistan. If convicted, he faces a total of 175 years in prison.
We are here because it's been tested on us, on Assange, what's going to come on us. We're here for democracy, for freedom of speech, and for the life of a man who had the courage to reveal the secrets of the deep state that we wouldn't even know in the history books.
If you look at the overreach by the US government, it decides that they can actually hunt down a foreign journalist who published on foreign soil the truth. It will send the signal that no journalist anywhere in the world is safe from the overreach of the US establishment.
Earlier, we were joined by John McAvoy, an independent journalist in London, who expressed strong doubts that Julian Assange could possibly get a fair trial in the United States.
We've already seen the entire story has been riddled with a completely unfair treatment of Julian Assange. And now if he actually reaches the destination of the US, we can only expect that it would actually get worse. Sorry, can I just add to that as well? Just this week, Declassified UK have released 2 separate articles suggesting that some of the judges involved in this case are utterly compromised because they have various financial links to the UK Foreign Office. So there's major questions over the independence of the British judiciary at the moment. And I mean, that's just talking about the UK, not even the final destination of the US. So I don't think there's any way that Julian Assange can expect a fair trial there.
And following Julian Assange's extradition hearing in London, his lawyer has revealed that the security services in the Ecuadorian embassy spied on his client on behalf of the U.S. intelligence services.
It is becoming clear that the security company that provided surveillance and custody to the Ecuadorian embassy in London has spied on Julian Assange, his defense attorneys, as well as other individuals, in favor of
Thursday, only on FtS.
Welcome back to From the South. Togo's President Faure Gnassingbé has been re-elected for a 4th term according to preliminary results announced by the Electoral Commission. He won 72% of the vote share in the first round of the presidential election, beating his closest rival and former Prime Minister Agbe Yomikojo, who just got 18%. Gnassingbé has led the country of 8 million people since taking over in 2005, following the death of his father, Gnassingbé Eyadema, who ruled the country for 38 years.
Based on all the data obtained from the local Independent Electoral Commission and the Independent Embassy Electoral Commissions, the candidate of the Union for the Republic Party, Mr. Gnassingbé Essosimna Faure, is provisionally proclaimed elected President of the Togolese Republic.
Togo's opposition has rejected the results announced by the Electoral Commission. They claim that the election was marred with widespread irregularities, including ballot stuffing and use of fake polling stations, which allowed ruling party supporters to vote more than once.
These figures do not express the reality of the votes cast by the Togolese people. It is because of this observation that we vehemently reject these results.
From when I started voting in this country up to now, only one person has won. What's this game? Where only one person wins all the time. It's not right. We want change. We have chosen Agbe Yome, and once again, the person who we didn't vote for won. We are tired of this.
A South African judge has issued an arrest warrant against Julius Malema, leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters Party, after he failed to appear in court for a pre-trial hearing on Monday to face charges of unlawful possession of a firearm and reckless endangerment. In this case, Malema and his bodyguard are accused of discharging a firearm at a political rally in 2008. Malema's lawyers, however, have argued that he was not obliged to appear in court since trial has not yet commenced. The warrant will, however, not be effected until the next court appearance on May 8th. Hundreds of Cameroonians have protested at the French embassy in the capital, Yaoundé, to demand an apology from the French president, who had promised to put pressure on the country's president. Pro-government protesters have condemned President Emmanuel Macron's comments on the ongoing conflict in South Cameroon, which he described as intolerable. Macron called on the government to work out a deal with the rebels to put an end to the conflict, but French-speaking Cameroonians say the English-speaking fighters are bent on dividing the Central African country. The conflict has left about 3,000 people dead and displaced more than 500,000.
But we want to petition the government of France and President Emmanuel Macron that just acknowledging the problem is not enough. France is now compelled by law to report this crisis to the UN Security Council for immediate intervention and to find solutions at the UN Security Council to end the impunities going on in southern Cameroon.
Lesotho's Prime Minister Thomas Thabane has appeared in court to face charges of murdering his estranged wife. Thabane is suspected of involvement in the murder of his then-wife, Alipo Lilo, who was shot dead in June 2017, 2 days before he took office for a second stint as premier. Thabane was originally supposed to appear in court on Friday, but could not do so as he was in South Africa reportedly receiving medical attention.
In the case of Motobi and Anara versus the Crown, to which this court was referred, I find that there is indeed a substantial question of law raised. The application for referral of the matter to the High Court is granted as prayed. I now hand down the ruling.
A man who would have turned 60 on Sunday has died from injuries incurred following a fire at the Heaven Fisco service station in Mandeville, Jamaica. The fire started around 5 p.m. on Friday after gas was spotted pouring from one of the pumps at the petrol station. 4 other people were seriously injured in the blaze, which damaged a section of the station and 12 vehicles that were on the property. Moving on, dubbed the greatest show on earth, Trinidad and Tobago's Carnival is in high gear with Jovert celebrations that started at 4 a.m. on Monday morning. Jovert is derived from French patois and means daybreak. It marks the official start of the 2-day Carnival celebrations in Trinidad and Tobago. Patrons release their inhibitions and douse each other in colored powder, paint, mud, oil, water, and even chocolate. Others bring folklore to life by portraying traditional characters. Venezuelans are also celebrating Carnival throughout the country. In the capital, Caracas, hundreds of people gathered to enjoy the parade, while hundreds have also traveled to the coastal state of La Guaira, located 40 minutes away from the capital, to celebrate Carnival on the beach. All these events are promoted by the government of President Nicolás Maduro as part of the 2020 Happy Carnival program that seeks to guarantee the rights for entertainment despite the U.S. economic blockade against Venezuela. Rio de Janeiro kicked off on Sunday its annual street carnival in a swirl of glitter, sequins, and an over-the-top spectacle this year. The reigning champions of the Rio Carnival, the Mangueira Samba School, showcased their flashy and colorful army of dancers and flowed to revelers. The school presented various revisionist versions of Jesus, a woman, a man in eyeshadow and lipstick, and also touched on topics of police violence. This year's carnival is being used to take a stand against intolerance and oppression of minorities by the government of President Jair Bolsonaro. The main carnival parade is expected to take place on Monday night. Our correspondent Ignacio Lemus has more from Sao Paulo.
The carnival is continuing across Brazil. The biggest turnout is here in Sao Paulo, with 15 million people taking part. It is also the carnival with the largest number of street blocks, as they call them here. Last year, there were 460 of these blocks in Sao Paulo, and this year, that has gone up to more than 600. You can see some of the people behind me, among them many who have come from other parts of the country to take part in Brazil's biggest party. In the middle of the festivities, there's a lot of satire and criticism directed at the government of Jair Bolsonaro and the censorship of those who oppose his policies. And this may be an indication of how the rest of this year will unfold. But for the moment, it's 4 days of partying for people who are in the middle of an economic crisis and want a chance to enjoy themselves.
The World Health Organization has warned the world to prepare for a pandemic, even though the COVID-19 outbreak is not yet a pandemic. So far, the virus has killed more than 2,600 people.
This is a time for all countries, communities, families, and individuals to focus on preparing. We do not live in a binary black and white world. It's not either or. We must focus on containment while doing everything we can to prepare for a potential pandemic.
The virus has spread further in East Asia and the Middle East. Let's have a look.
On Monday, Japan confirmed 844 cases of COVID-19, including 691 from the Diamond Princess cruise ship. Meanwhile, Kuwait is reporting 3 cases of the coronavirus among people who have travelled to Iran. The first case of COVID-19 was reported on Monday in Bahrain, identified as a national who had travelled back from Iran. South Korea has reported a total of 833 cases of the virus and 7 deaths. Likewise, Iraq also confirmed its first COVID-19 infection in an Iranian national studying in the southern holy city of Najaf.
Stock markets plunged around the world on Monday due to a recent surge in coronavirus cases in Italy and South Korea. The Dow Jones Index finished down more than 1,000 points, or 3.6% lower at the closing bell, marking its worst single-day drop in more than 2 years. United Health, American Express, Cisco, Visa, and Apple were among the worst performers Monday, all falling more than 4%. Experts say the volatile market reactions show how much uncertainty still surrounds the outbreak. A United States court has convicted Hollywood film producer Harvey Weinstein of sexual assault. Weinstein was found guilty of a criminal sex act for assaulting production assistant Mimi Haleyi at his apartment in 2006 and third-degree rape of a woman in 2013. The jury found him not guilty on the most serious charge, predatory sexual assault, that could have resulted in a life sentence. He awaits sentencing on the 11th of March. Canadian police have arrested a group of land and human rights defenders at a rail blockade in eastern Ontario. A stream of police vehicles were seen moving in early on Monday, with 10 Mohawk warriors subsequently detained as authorities attempted to clear the area. The Tieng Dinaga blockade was erected by the Mohawk people in solidarity with the Wet'suwet'en people, stopping all trains going through their territory. They pledged to maintain the blockade until Wet'suwet'en chiefs confirmed that the Royal Canadian Mounted Police had pulled out from their ancestral lands. Actions have been held from coast to coast against the impeding Coastal GasLink pipeline project. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is coming under fire for spending $18 million to host U.S. President Donald Trump for his first official visit to the country. Dancers and performers greeted Trump and his wife Melania in the city of Ahmedabad on Monday. The leaders were expected to discuss trade, the Kashmir dispute, and the contentious new citizenship law. Modi's budget for the Trump visit included building a wall to conceal the slums that exit a short distance away from the airport. Our contributor Navodita Kumari brings us more on these developments.
This wall near the Ahmedabad airport didn't exist 2 weeks ago. In fact, it was made in a hurry to hide the view of this slum from the US President Donald Trump, who arrived in India just a few hours ago. There are about 2,500 people living in this slum, which lacks basic amenities like potable water, electricity and toilets. They told me that they feel humiliated by this move, as they say that the amount of money they spent on this wall, they could have used in making a school or maybe a hospital. The government of Prime Minister Narendra Modi has spent $18 million just in welcoming Trump in this city, which means that every minute Trump spends in the city, it costs the government $90,000. But the question is, can this wall hide the fact that India is home to more than a quarter of world's poor, and it ranks 102nd out of 117 countries in the Global Hunger Index? This is Navodita Kumari for Telesur English from Ahmedabad.
We thank Navodita for that report, and with that we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us